Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our Project Planning with Microsoft webinar. We're going to show you the differences between Planner and the new project for the web. I just want to let everyone know that this session is being recorded and we'll be sending that out after the webinar. So first, I just want to give you a quick update on like Marquee 360, and I know we have a few people who've been on before, so I'm going to go quickly. If you're new, this will be new information. If not, bear with me. So we are a Microsoft Gold partner for project and portfolio management and collaboration and cloud productivity. We actually just were announced as a finalist for project and portfolio management, which is very exciting. We have a broad footprint, locations and resources across the globe, across the US, Canada, Europe, and Australia. We have a strong relationship with the Microsoft team, the project team, and field sellers. So any changes that are coming down on the roadmap, we can get ready for those and have our customers and your environments ready for any changes that might come down. So what we do in Marquee 360, we focus on digital transformation, which means we take Microsoft technologies, we expand their functionality, and we also bring them together so that they're all in one centralized place. So you're not having to switch from platform to platform. You can organize all of your work in one centralized location. We focus a lot on customer success. We want you guys to be as successful as possible. We don't just come in, implement something, and leave. We like to be a partner with our customers. So we're there from discovery, deciding which platform works best for you, implementing that, and then being there with post support, adoption, training, workshops, things like that. All right. I also have on the call with me Mia. Some of you might be familiar with her. Mia, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see the familiar faces again and also the new ones. Welcome.
Awesome. And May is going to be doing our technical portion of the demo today, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to her.
All right. So, as Erin said, today we're going to talk about Microsoft Planner and we're also going to talk about Microsoft Project for the Web. One of the things that we'll also add in at the end is we'll show you our pre-configured solution for Project for the Web. And there is going to be a big part of this where there's some overlap, where we get to see those same planner features, but from multiple different perspectives. So what's great about everything that we're going to look at today is that you can use it based on what your organization's needs are. So we're going to start off with Planner, both in the slides and then also when we do our demo today. And Planner is meant to be very simple. So if you have a list of tasks that you need to track and maybe make assignments with and organize slightly, Planner is fantastic for that. So it allows you to quickly be able to set up a couple of tasks, make assignments, collaborate with the team to get those done, and track progress as those tasks are being completed. Erin, will you go to the next slide, please? And then if you need something a little bit more, something that'll help you to track an actual project, we'll look at that too. Project for the Web is a recent offering. It's been around for a while, but it is something that is growing. And I have been excited to see some of the changes with Project for the Web lately. And it's also very simple and easy to use. It's really straightforward, it's intuitive, and there's a lot that we can do as far as planning goes using Project for the Web. And then I don't have a slide for this next one. We'll just look at it together in real life, but we'll look at our pre-configured solution for Project for the Web, which we call PPM 360. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to track things for your project like issues and risks, action items, status reports, you name it. Erin, do you mind going to the next slide? And then after this one, I'll start presenting my screen. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we look at today is this little kind of very simple way of comparing Planner and Project for the Web. Okay, so we can see a list of things that people commonly need to do when it comes to task tracking. So we know that both Planner and Project for the Web can both do wonders as far as task tracking and different ways to visualize those tasks. What we'll do first is take a look at Planner, and then we'll come back and look at Project for the Web, and we'll get to see a little bit more related to scheduling. All right, so I'm gonna switch over and start to share my screen. Thanks for the intro and for the slides, Erin.
You got it?
And someone, please let me know when my screen is visible.
I can see it, Mia.
All right, I'm going to stop my video for now at least because my screen that I'm presenting is facing in a different direction. All right, so we're going to start off anywhere essentially in Office 365. We're going to take a look at Microsoft Planner. So from any place in Office 365, we can use the Microsoft App Launcher to launch Planner. I open that up in a new tab. So what we'll see here is the Microsoft Planner app. This is the web version. There are other versions as well. So you can see the nice banner right at the top here lets us know that there is a mobile app. And one of the things that we'll see is that there's a lot of ways that we can interact with our planner tasks. We can click and drop and drag and things like that. Those things are tremendously easy to do on a mobile app. So when I see Planner on my phone, it's really easy to make task updates. And part of the reason I'm bringing that up is that task tracking is extremely important from, every role. As project managers, we want to be able to have those tasks assigned, and we want to make sure that we're making it easy to get those task updates from the resources that are actually doing the work. And then, of course, as someone that's assigned to tasks, we don't want to have to jump through too many hoops to have to update our tasks. So what Planner does is it makes updating tasks very easy, which is helpful to everybody that's involved. So I can't actually show the mobile app on my screen here today, but the interface that we're going to look at today is similar, but the mobile experience is just a little adjusted to make it easier to view and update on a phone. So what we'll do today is we'll just create a new plan, and I'd like to just walk through how simple it is to do this. So there are a couple of options that we'll fill in here. I could add a description for this, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'll just go ahead and create that plan for us. If you have questions, please continue to add those to the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on them. I don't always see all of them, um, but I'll see what I can do. So there's a question in the chat now asking if Planner is a separate plugin or if it's part of Project for the Web. And essentially, Planner is its own application that comes along with your Office subscription, and then it can be used in conjunction with things like Project for the Web. So we'll get to see that when we go over into after we finish the Planner portion of things, we'll look at Project for the Web and we'll see how this interface interacts. An important thing about that, about this last question that was in the chat, is that there is a team member experience that is in the process of being released now. So some people have it and then some people are getting it soon. And what that does is it really links those two together so that the team members can come in and quickly and easily update their tasks. So we created this new plan in Microsoft Planner called Webinar Plan. I'll just kind of note that there are a couple of different views here, which we'll get into later on. And there are some filters and things like that that we can use. But the main interface is going to have, at least in this board view, some different cards. And what we'll do is we'll start to build out a couple of tasks. I'm going to keep these very simple. But to add a new task, I already have a task card here, and we can just fill in the information. Oops. And then I can do things like set a bucket. So not started, in progress, and completed. Those will show up, those buckets will show up later on. I can set a due date for a task, and then I can assign someone. So it recognizes me. I'll assign myself to the first task. And then Erin, look out, I'll assign you something else later on. But to create a task is as simple as that. We had a few fields that we filled in, a couple of clicks, and we've got our task there. that was kind of the simplest task we could create. You might want to add in additional information. So clicking on the card is going to enlarge it and give you some more fields to fill out. And here, the amount of detail that you choose to enter in is basically up to you. So you might be fine with a very simple task, but for those times that you do need a little more detail, you've got plenty of options here on this card. What we'll do is we'll take a quick walk through this card and look at what some of those options are. So starting at the top, there's a way to mark this as complete by clicking here, but we don't want to jump in and do that too quickly. I could assign more resources here. There are labels that you can set up. So they start out just named after colors, but then you can edit and then you can make your own labels. So let's say that I want to label this. Let's say I'll make a label called urgent, and then I'll assign that to this. All right. There are different buckets, so we'll come back and we'll create a few buckets later on. There's a way to mark your progress. You can have different priority. Perhaps urgent wasn't the best label for me to put in here, knowing that the priorities are right there. But I think as far as an example goes, it served its purpose. We'll go ahead and put in a start date. There are notes that we can add if there's anything that we need to note about this task for the person that's actually going to complete this work. And there are checklist items, which I actually use pretty often. A lot of times, either I'll assign tasks or I'll have tasks that are assigned to me that aren't as simple as, just task one. Sometimes there are different parts that I'll need to get into place. So I can track those here, and that helps me with tracking, but also the person that assigned me this task helps them to know how far along I am and which stage I'm on. There are, of course, um, there is, of course, the ability to add in attachments. All right, so we'll add our little attachment in there. We can choose whether this shows on the card or not. And I know this is grayed out, but you can see in the background, I've got my overall task name. I've got my label showing there. The different parts that I set up are showing here too. I can also indicate if I want the attached file to display here. And then we can also have comments. So a lot of times we'll use the comment section because it tracks everything that's being entered in here. So I'm going to add that new comment. Very exciting comment. And then we can see that it's time tracked. So I can see that I made the comment and I can see the date and time. If there is ever anything that we need to discuss back and forth, maybe I tried to start this, but I don't have the access I need or anything like that, it's nice to be able to track that whole conversation here. All right, so that's the card. And as we started to fill it out, this was getting updated automatically. So that is one way of looking at this. Um, Let's go ahead and just quickly create one more task. And then you can choose, each one of these details that you need to enter in. This is looking up to our Active Directory. So now anybody that is here as part of our organization can be added to a task and assigned. All right, so I don't have to worry about building a team for everybody that's used to Project Online. You're used to building a project team and then making your assignments. I don't need to worry about that really here at all. All right, so we've got a couple of different ways of looking at this. Right now, if we look along the top, I can see the members of this group. So right now it's pretty small, it's just me and Erin. There are different filters that I could apply. So I can filter whether something is late or due today or due tomorrow, right? And then these kind of add on to each other. I can also filter based on priority. If I had listed a real priority instead of just the label there, Um, I can also sort by the label itself, so I'm only seeing what's urgent. And then I can also sort by assigned to or filter by what's assigned to Erin or both of us. Okay, I'll clear those filters out. And then the next thing that we have the option to do is group. So grouping by progress is great. It's a great way to view these tasks and make updates. But there are other views. So we can group these by bucket. And then what we can do is we can add in buckets based on what we want. So let's say that we want to have a bucket for each workflow stage. So we can have our initiate bucket. We can have our, let's just name it plan. And then from here to update these, I can just drag and drop these into the appropriate bucket. I can also group these by assigned to, so now I'm seeing the tasks based on who they're assigned to. A lot of this, I'm sure you can picture that as you go through meetings where you're gathering progress from a team, this makes it really easy because now I can go through me and all of my tasks and mark things as completed as needed. Or I can go ahead through here and go person by person. So you can see, you can group these by due dates and different things like that, by labels, all types of different ways to interact with this. And with this number of combinations, everybody might have a slightly different way of looking at this. One thing that I really like with this view in particular is that you can drag and drop your tasks to mark them as completed. We can adjust this too if we don't want to see this graphic all the time and maybe we just want to see the checklist, and then as we start to work through this, you can mark the checklist items as complete and you can see the checklist items show there. So just looking at the bottom here, I can kind of see at a high level and a glance where we are. I know there are some comments. I know there's an attachment. I know there are checklist items. I can see the due date and who's assigned. So that makes this really easy to quickly interact with. One of the reasons why that's important, and I'm sure you all know this already, but that's really important because when it comes to task updates, we want that process to be as simple as possible so that we actually get those task updates instead of having people that are, worried about finding the time to make those task updates. So far in Planner, we created a couple of tasks. We looked at this board view. We saw that there are different filters and different ways to group these tasks. We also saw that we can open up a task and fill in all of this information there. There's also a charts view. This is more statistical information, but I think that what's also important to note is that we can also create tasks from here and also update them. So at any time, I can go ahead and mark this as completed. The schedule view is sometimes nice if you have a lot of tasks because then you can look at your calendar and get an idea of where things are in the scheme of things. Okay. Notice again on this right panel, we can still add a new task and we can look at tasks that are in progress completed and just kind of expand these sections as needed. Right. And you can play around with the way that this is set a little bit as well. So that is a quick look at Microsoft Planner when we're looking at Microsoft Planner through the browser. We spent a little bit of time here just because this part we're going to be able to look at in multiple different ways. Now, looking at this in the browser is great. If you're in the browser already, it's really nice and easy to be able to come here. We saw earlier that using the Microsoft App Launcher, I was able to get over to Planner pretty quickly. Sometimes though, and this might just be me, but I'll speak for myself. But sometimes I don't want to go into the browser and open up this section to look at. So there are some other things that you can do. One of the features that's being tested out now, and I have this turned on so I can try the coming soon features, but this to-do app is added here. So now I can see a lot of those different tasks that are assigned to me through Outlook. Another thing that I can do is view those assigned tasks within Teams. We're going to look at Teams a little bit more pretty soon. The next thing that I wanted to show is Project for the Web. And that's something that may be new to some of you. I think it's worth us taking a look there. And we're going to get over to Project for the Web from anywhere in Office 365. So again, I'm going to go back to that app launcher. And this time I'm going to open up Project in a new tab. So here I can see a couple of things. This is called the project homepage. All right, so from here, I can get to different areas. You might recognize this if you use Project Online. There's that link to get to Project Online down here. And if we look at the main content area, you can see with my recent projects that I've got different types of projects in here. Some of these were created in Project Online. Some of these are Project for the Web projects. What I'll do now is just go to New Project. We'll create a blank new project together. This project for the web project is going to look a little bit familiar in some regards. Before we actually take a deeper dive into this, I do want to go back to the slides just really quickly. So far, we looked at Planner, we saw, how we can track tasks and their progress. We saw the board view. We spent most of our time there, and we could create tasks ad hoc. We can do all of those same things with Project for the Web. But in addition to what we've seen already, we're going to have the option to include timelines and also do some basic scheduling. So that's where we're headed now. I want to show you those two additions. So we're looking at our Project for the Web project. Let's go ahead and give this project a name. So you can see some general information. The start date defaults to today's date. We, of course, are 0% completed. And then I can choose a calendar if I have any set up. So that information is there. Let's close this. And now if we look along the top, this is a little bit similar to what we saw in Planner, right? We have those different views that are listed along the top here. We also have those same filters and we can see the group members as I start to add them. But here we have more of that scheduling interface. One of the things that comes up a lot here is that people will start to ask, how similar this is to Microsoft Project Professional. And with some of the recent additions here, there are a lot of things that we can do there that, or do here that are similar to what we would do in Project Professional when it comes to scheduling. So I'm going to try to quickly add in a few tasks here. All right, so pretty quick and easy to do that. A lot of times in Project Professional, I might do things like rearrange these tasks, right? So let's go ahead and we can drag and drop to interact with these. Let's say that I have some tasks to be subtasks. So I'll select a group of them. So notice here, some of the options that you're used to or that you may be used to in Microsoft Project Professional or other applications are also here. So if I made a mistake and I need to delete, I can do that. Notice I can add or remove dependencies or mark something as completed from here. But for right now, I'm just going to give this schedule a little bit of shape and indent a few tasks. All right, there are a couple of columns here. So there's a quick look column, which we'll get to see more of soon. There's an assigned to column. You may be wondering about the columns that we're seeing here and thinking about how you would use these columns, okay? One of the things that I had mentioned when we were first doing the look at Planner was that you can add as little or as much detail as you want. And that's true here too. If you're basically managing a task list, right? This could be more than enough for you, right? We've already have our task here, or we already have our tasks. We've already made some assignments. I'm going to go a step farther and make, a couple, add some durations in here, but you may want to do more than that. Oh, I just realized I forgot to assign one of those. Actually, let's assign Erin to one of these so I'm not doing all the work by myself. All right. So one of the things we can do here beyond just making these assignments and adding the duration here is I can add more columns. So you can customize how much of this information you want to capture. So we might definitely want to get the start date. Okay. We might want to also grab the effort so that we can not just use what's automatically filled in here, but maybe we want to update some of these. Whoops. Right, so you have that option, and you can see there are other columns that you can add as well, okay? Even for things that aren't necessarily listed here, you can go ahead and add the new field to take care of that. But if we look at this, we can add buckets, very similar to what we saw in Planner earlier, where we had those different Planner buckets. You may be used to dependents, so we can definitely add dependents, whether it's something that is a predecessor or successor. I want to show kind of a more fun way to do it than to add it here. So I'm going to I guess I'll leave this column here, and we'll update them later on. From here, let's say that the next thing that we'll do, actually, before we go on to anything else, I do just want to show that the same thing that we saw in Planner. where we could click on the card and add more details. We've got something similar here with Project for the Web. So if we need to add more details, a label like what we saw earlier, right? Or a note or a start and finish duration, all of those things, including dependencies, can be added here. All right, so you can choose if you like this view and you want to do all of your task detailing here, you can. But for demonstration purposes, we're going to mix this up a little bit. So that's the grid view, okay? It's probably the most similar to other scheduling engines when it comes to typing in tasks in Project Online. Let's go ahead to the board view next. Right now, you can see that we've got bucket one, a generic bucket in there. Let's go ahead and I'm not going to be too creative. We'll just make that bucket A. We'll make this one bucket B, and then we'll also add a bucket C. Oops. Now to organize these, we can go ahead and drag and drop these. All right, so very easy to update and modify tasks in this way. If we had not wanted to add our tasks using the grid view, we could go ahead and add tasks this way, just like we did when we were in the Planner application. All right, so a lot of similarities. Same thing that we saw in Planner also when we clicked on a card and we could add more details. We could do that here too. The details that we have here are a little bit different, right? We can add a dependency, which we didn't see in Planner. The effort is more clearly written here to show the completed, remaining, and total effort. Some things that we can do that we also saw in Planner are adding these different checklist items. Okay. Uh, from here, another thing that we can do is group these. So just like we saw in the Planner application, we have the same options here. We can group these by assigned to. We can group these by progress. And the big thing here is that we can mark things, we can drag and drop to mark things as either in progress or completed. For people that are assigned to tasks especially, being able to update the tasks in this way on a mobile device is super easy. And, it's something that it's a motion we're all used to using with swiping, right? So we use that for so many other things. We can do it here too. Right, so we could group by finish date, by labels, by priorities. So we have all those different options. The filters that we saw in in Planner are here too, but there are additional ones because now since we're in Project for the Web and not just plain Planner, there are other things that we can do. So one example of that is looking at the critical path. All right. Once we go ahead into the next view, we're actually add the dependencies, then I'll come back to critical path so we can take a look at that. So next we'll go over to the timeline view. And the timeline view is very simple. We have a lot of what we saw in the grid view, the list of the different tasks, but this is where I prefer now to add my dependencies. I'm very used to doing these in other applications and kind of typing in what my dependencies are or adding those in different ways. But here, it's really nice to be able to just drag and drop and visually add these in. All right, so we'll go ahead and add some dependencies in here. We can reschedule tasks if we need to. So if our finish date should be out here, we can do that. If we need to extend the duration of a task, we can do that from here too. So it's very interactive and a different type of interface that we can interact with. We still see for our summary task, the roll up of the whole duration of the task below it. So that bar is there for that. We can zoom in, we can zoom back out. There's a slider at the bottom, so we can go ahead and slide over to the area that we're interested in looking at. There's also this go to date. This schedule's not really long enough to take advantage of it, but if you had a longer schedule, you could use this to navigate quickly to a specific date. Oops, didn't mean to zoom out like that. All right, and if we go to filters here, this is a lot like the filters that we saw in the board view earlier and like the filters we saw in Planner, but this is where we can come back to that critical path. So it'll highlight that critical path for you. All right, and then we can adjust things as needed. Now in real life, we probably wouldn't just drag out our finish date like this, but just for the sake of the demo to show, how that critical path looks. Okay. So that's one of the nicer new features that we've got there, and that makes this whole thing similar to what you may be used to in some other applications. All right, so that's something that I in particular was really looking forward to being able to see that critical path here. And then lastly, we'll take a look at this charts view. And again, this is a lot like what we saw in Planner earlier. Here, we're able to look at this more from a statistical perspective and see, how we're doing as far as what's in progress, what's late. Today, I didn't really do much progress on these tasks, right? So we've got everything not started. You can imagine that it would be nice to be able to quickly tell what's late, all right? And what I really think is great about Project for the Web and this whole different way of looking at things is that everybody can choose what works best for them. And that applies in multiple areas. The level of detail can be based on what works best for you as an individual project manager, right? And then also how you tell what's late, what's in progress. This charts view is great for that, right? We can also look at tasks by person here, but then we can also do a lot of those same things using these views. All right. And we can make our updates. We can do these in multiple places. Each one of these different views also has the ability for us to go ahead and open this up and make updates. And we don't have to think about, making updates in multiple different places, right? Once we make an update here for in progress, we'll see that in those other views because overall we're looking at the same information just in slightly different ways. So one of the things you'll see in this quick look column, for example, is going to be those checklist items that I add. So here, we can see those as they're being completed pop up in this quick look. So you don't necessarily need to open a card, but if you want to open a card and see more of that information, you can. So now we added our depends on column here, and then we added our dependencies over in the timeline view. But here, now that we're back, we can see our depends on and our dependencies are listed here. So if you're used to adding your dependencies and more of this type of grid view, that option is not gone or unavailable. It's just that you have the option. You can add it in this way or you can add it in on one of the other views. Okay. So all those different places, we've got the same information and you can choose how you'd like to update it. So this is a quick look at Project for the Web. One of the things you can do with Project for the Web also is that you can sync this over with Teams. Um, I didn't sync this project over with Teams, but if we go over to Teams, I think it's hiding behind. Here we are. If we go over to Teams, I do have one team that's set up now with a blank schedule. But if we go over to this is just going to the add app option here and adding project, right? The very first one. Once you do that, it'll ask you to name the project and, sync it over. But I just wanted to show quickly that having this here, this now allows me to do that project for the web functionality here with this team. So the same things that you just saw me do, right? Adding in those tasks. Let's give them a slightly different name. So the same things that you just saw me do, I could also be doing here, okay? And then that would sync and I could see it in Project for the Web or I could see it here in Teams. So again, part of the reason I like to show those types of things is because based on where you are at the time, you might have a preference as far as where you make updates. And that's another important thing when it comes to task updates, right? Those need to be easily accessible. So if people are already in Teams, we can quickly make those updates in Teams. And if people are already in the browser, those updates can be made there. So the next thing I want to show is going to be Project for the Web. And give me just one moment to bring that slide deck back up. I only have one slide for this. So we've looked at Planner so far, and we got to see what we can do as far as setting up cards and making assignments and things like that. We then went over to Project for the Web, and we were able to see that we have the same functionality we had in Planner, But we also had that really nice timeline view where we could drag and drop to add the dependencies. We could open up the cards and add information about the dependencies. We saw the critical path there, and we saw multiple ways to build out a schedule and still remain flexible. So we could add in basically just a task list and that information, or we could add in more information like the assignments and the amount of work, how much work is remaining. All of that was an option there. So we were able to do that basic scheduling. So what I would be wondering if I were you is what I would do if I needed to track more project details. Sometimes, with a project, we're going to have all types of things going on. The schedule and the assigned tasks are, of course, very important to any project, but there's often a lot that goes on that's more of the story behind the schedule, right? We might want to have um, reports that we can show related to resources or issues and risks or status reports, right? So what we've done is we've created a pre-configured solution for Project for the Web that allows you to capture all of that for a project. And that's what we're going to look at next. Our pre-configured solution for Project for the Web is built in Power Apps. And I happen to have been on the projects page, but I think the home page is a more ideal place to start. On the home page, what we've got there are a set of dashboards. So this way, at a glance, we can get some information about our overall portfolio and the different projects that are part of that portfolio. So if we want to look at projects by type, right, we can see that quickly what we've got. We can hover over this to get more information. So it's kind of like being able to see a Power BI report visual um, without having to navigate over to Power BI. And these are all things that could be updated. So our pre-configured solution comes with all of these set up, but what we do during implementations is we start out with requirements gathering to see what would be important for you at a glance to see on a page like this. And that continues on as we start to look at projects. I'm going to go back over to the projects area. I actually have a demo project that we can go ahead and take a look at for today. So I'll open up that project. And before we actually jump in and look at this project, I do feel the need to do a little bit of orientation. So at the top here, first, we can get here through our app, our Microsoft App Launcher. So the same way that we opened up Project earlier and Planner and Teams, all of that's still accessible here, right? This happens to be that I opened up Power Apps and navigated to this specific app. But at the top, we've got options to save and close, things like that. Below that, we can see the project name. And below that, we can see a business process flow. All right. So some of you may refer to this as project governance workflow. But what this allows us to do is track where we are in this project lifecycle. This is something that is tremendously useful if we're working on more of a project and going beyond, just the schedule or a task list. Now we can go ahead and do multiple things here. It could be that we just click next stage and we go into the next stage. It could also be that we have to get approval to move into the next stage. Those are all things that we consult with you about and then build as needed. All right. So we have the ability to go ahead and build this so that an approval is requested, and then we move into the next stage once that approval is granted. But for demonstration purposes, we've got this set up so you can just see how it moves into the next stage. And then below the business process flow, there are different tabs. Those different tabs are going to have different sections and different fields on them. Okay, so we're starting out on the summary tab here, and we've got some general information about the project. One thing that is really big with us is that we like to be able to sync our projects over with Microsoft Teams and Planner. Okay, and I think that it's pretty clear why we do that. One, because a lot of people spend a lot of time collaborating with teams in Microsoft Teams. And then two, because Planner can easily be used along with Teams. And as we saw earlier, Planner just makes it so easy for everybody to update their tasks. And it makes it easy for me as the owner of the project to be able to see where things are at a glance. So that's what this section here is related to. And then there are other things we could create programs or portfolios so that an individual project can be linked with a program or a portfolio. What that allows you to do is then look at things um, at the portfolio level and see overall how the portfolio is doing health-wise, right? Same with the program. There are different project states, different types of fields that can be entered in here. I opened up an existing project so that you didn't have to watch me fill out all of these. So there are already entries in here, but I guess the main takeaway is that there are different field types, right? And also that even though this is a pre-configured solution, we would talk with you about which fields are going to deliver the most value for your team. So what I'll do is I'll take a look through some of these different tabs just to give you an idea. All right, so here we can identify a problem statement, an objective, scope. It gives us a place to enter in more of a narrative summary. One of the things that is going to come into play when we're having a project and we're going beyond just the need for a schedule, right, is going to be the need to report on our project status. So this status tab is geared towards that. You can see the status summary has some of these indicators here. These in this environment are just manual selectors, but a lot of times what we see is that these are calculated. Sometimes it'll be that if any one of these is yellow, overall health is going to be yellow, or in this case, critical, right? Sometimes the schedule health is going to be based on our actual schedule, right? So those are all things that can be considered when setting this up. Right, and then you'll see that some of these fields are calculated, right? So what this is doing is it's looking to see how many active issues I have, how many active risks, how many active changes. That's all things, those are all things that'll be pulled into a project status report that we'll see in a little bit. I can see the last modifications I've made, and then at the bottom I can see my different status reports. So looking at these are the last few weeks. It looks like I've actually missed the last week or two, but we can see those last few reporting periods that I added these for. New status report here is going to give me the option to go ahead and enter in the values for this. So I'm not going to take too long, but I do just want to show some of the highlights here. So here, notice that there's a submitter, typically the project manager, and then I can submit this to someone. So let's say that I need to report to my boss once a week. What I can do with this submitted to, once I identify my boss here, I can have this go ahead and send an email to him or her. All right. And that way they don't have to, chase me down or anything for the status update. I would know that I just need to go ahead and click this and enter this value. And now what this would do is it'll send an email out to Neil. All right. And then I've also got this new status row listed here. What we'll see is that this also rolls up into Power BI reports. So I am going to have that nice status report there, in addition to now my supervisor being able to view this status in real time. Now that's not something you have to do, but if it's something that you like to do, that's available. And then as we start to look through the tabs, you'll see kind of what we can do. There are some light financial tracking. We actually have a separate financial tracking app for people that use purchase orders, purchase recs, and invoices and all of that. So that separate app could be used for financials. This is more meant for light financial tracking. With resources, we can list out our resource team. And if anybody's used to Project Online, you may be familiar with that whole process. And I think I might have brought this up earlier on this call, where you have to build your project team. And that's something that's not necessary here. Same as we saw with Planner and with Project for the Web out of the box earlier. So I could add my resources here and list out, how long I need them and all of that, but it's not necessary. So you can see here, I do have some people that I've added. These are people that I've assigned to tasks. And once I go ahead and start to make task assignments, those names will automatically get added to the resources tab. I want to pause for a moment and just try to recap a little bit. I'm hoping that I'm not losing anybody with everything that we've talked about. So this is the part where we start to get into where there's overlap between the three different topics I talked about today. So remember, we looked at Planner, right? The separate Microsoft Planner application. We saw simply, we can add tasks, we can look at it, the different views, we can filter and group. And then we also looked at Project for the Web out of the box, which allows you to have, the planner board, but also the grid and the timeline view where we added those dependencies. So that's what we've looked at so far. This was Project for the Web out of the box. And then after that, what we did is we moved into Marquee 360's pre-configured solution for Project for the Web. So what that does is it adds all these project details to Project for the Web. This tasks tab is where we start to see a lot of what we saw with Project for the Web, out of the box Project for the Web earlier. This is where we can have our schedule, so our grid view with the different columns that we choose to add. So remember we added these columns. We can still use all of those out of the box Project for the Web features that you see within this pre-configured solution. So here this board is a little bit different. I've got some color coding going on here just to make things a little bit more bright and fun. I can still go ahead and, start to move things to different buckets to change things around. That timeline view that we saw that we used earlier to look at our critical path and to look at adding our dependencies and everything, that's all still here. All right, and then that charts view that we saw. So Project for the Web is still here, and all what we've done with the pre-configured solution is just add to it so that you can have that full project and capture not just the schedule, but the whole story behind the schedule. And a lot of that story gets captured in the next couple of tabs. So we've got our schedule. We know sometimes things get delayed. We may have had an issue, right? We might have had a risk actually that we would have captured here. Here are all the risks that are captured for this specific project, okay? What's nice about these next couple of tabs, and they're all set up in a similar way, but what's nice here is that we can see the risks that are already out here. We can see their status, right? Whether they're active, proposed, or closed. We can see which category they belong to, an exposure value, cost exposure, when it's due. So high level information, but then we can also add a new risk. I won't ask you to watch me sit here and fill out the whole form, but just note that there's different information that we can fill in. If there's anything that you capture that we don't have here, that is something we would add in for you. Let's say that risk became an issue and maybe it impacts our schedule, but what we would be able to do then is capture that and have a tracker for all of those things. The same with changes, right? As things change, as we're moving through the project, which they often do, we can capture all of that here. The same with those important decisions that we make as we're moving along, right? So we might be at the end of our first milestone and a decision is made. It's nice to be able to capture all of that right here. One of the things I want to point out here, and we mentioned this with the statuses earlier, or something similar at least, is that these can be set up so that it doesn't all just live right here. These can roll up to reports, and then also notice here there's an approval step. So if this decision or maybe one of the changes needs to actually be approved, what we can do is set this up so you enter the information here and you send it to somebody for approval. So this is not just tracking the change or the decision, but it's also tracking, that whole approval workflow. And then lessons learned, we always like to include, it's important to capture, the things that worked out great and also the things that you want to improve for later on. One of the really great things about capturing all of this information here is that all of this information rolls up, right? So we can look at an individual portfolio. And if I want to see information about this portfolio, there are a couple of tabs here. So overall health of the portfolio is here. I can see the financial information related to this portfolio. So this is all rolling up from the different projects that are part of this portfolio. And then the individual projects. If I want to go ahead and take a look at some of these, maybe to see why this one's critical, I can go directly into the project from here. Programs is very similar. right? We have this set up a little bit differently, but you can drill down and look at more of that information. The information about the resources that we assign to tasks can also be stored here. So if we want to capture skills and, who's great at what, we can go ahead and do that. The roles too. If you choose to have different roles set up in here, you can do that. There are some things that I didn't talk about the projects, like the ability to have project schedule templates, right? So that when you create a project, the template's already there instead of building them all out one by one. I chose not to show that today because part of the fun of this session today is actually adding in those tasks and looking at how we would interact with those. But even with a schedule, there were options to go ahead and add new tasks, and you can drag and drop them into place. So you still have all those options. We have a very short amount of time. I know Erin has at least one more slide. I want to give a quick peek at the reports while I've got everybody, just to kind of put a nice little bow on this whole story, right? We saw all of this information being captured in PPM 360, which is our pre-configured solution for Project for the Web. But we want to talk about how that looks to the, people looking at our overall portfolio. So that portfolio health rolls up here, right? We saw in the status tab, we were able to set the status for each one of these. Our projects had a different state. We can go ahead and add links here or use these links to access the project. Some of the more general information is going to roll up into these different dashboards, right? So information from the schedule is going to show on these, right? Information about where we are in the workflow and the status, the financial information. We can, as long as we're capturing that, we can roll it up into these different reports. All right, some of these I have filters on already so that we're just being able to zero in to certain things. But you can see some of the milestones from the different projects will roll up here. Information about the program, right? Because we saw the programs were set up, and so were the portfolios. The status report is really clean and straightforward, but those different fields that we filled in when we looked at the status tab earlier, we get to see some of the KPI status indicators, some of the roll-up of cost information, important dates, and then those important narrative text fields so that we can explain, what we've accomplished and what our next steps are, and explain, anything else we want to as well. And I won't spend too much time on this just because of time, but I just want to quickly give you a peek that risks can roll up here, issues, changes, resource information as well. So to help you with scheduling, one of the things that I want to point out here that I particularly love is that we can see not just what's assigned, but also the progress, right? Because when we're looking at what's assigned to people, sometimes that doesn't tell us if they're behind or maybe if they're ahead of schedule and we can grab them for another task. So all of those types of considerations are kind of built into this. And just so that we know what we're looking at, um, this is our report pack that comes with our Project for the Web solution. So I'll hand this back over to Erin and then let you go ahead and ask any questions. I guess, Erin, since I'm still sharing, I can bring up your last slide for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. I'm just going to throw a quick link to the survey into the chat. If you guys can fill that out, that'd be awesome. The reason for doing this session today is we get a lot of questions as to what product we're working in when. So I think this gives you guys hopefully gives you a good indicator of where functionality begins and ends in each of the solutions we talked about today. So if you could fill out the survey and let us know if that's accurate or if, we need to do another session, that would be awesome. So we're giving you guys the most value out of your time. Thank you for spending the hour with us, especially with the holiday coming up. We thank you guys for doing that. And if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out. And keep an eye on our social media pages. We have our summer webinar series going on. So we're also adding new sessions to that all the time. So be sure to check it out. We um, add links to those on our social media pages and our Eventbrite where you guys signed up to. Thank you.
Thank you all. Please feel free to
Thank
reach
you,
out with
everyone.
questions if you have them.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.